Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friday and a Better Way of Life. Now, if any of you are just feeling the need at this point to unwind, I'm trying very hard to cover the brand there. I have an unwind tea bag that's been passed to me before we go live today. That's rather nice, isn't it? It has vitamin B12 in it as well, which probably does something for you, and flavourings. Strawberry and chamomile. Sounds like it just make me go to sleep, actually. So I'm going to stick to the normal tea instead. I've got my cup of positivity with me. It's fading, though. Can you see that? It's fading.
I need to get. You want a new cup?
I need a new one. There we are. Marianne, how are you? How's your week been?
Well,
you knew it was a loaded question. That's why I asked it.
I thought I was doing really well in life. Well, we were talking about this earlier about how, and I was speaking to you this morning about this, about how for me my diagnosis of ADHD was not really. It happened before it exploded with everybody else or lots of other people getting it. But actually, what it did for me at the time was made me realize probably why I would do all the things I would do, which was miss appointments, my bank cards. Well, thankfully, it doesn't have the, what's it called? What's that thing when they send your bank card out, it's got the number of times they've given you a bank card.
Oh, the issue number.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Because I used to miss appointments, turn up at the wrong addresses and all sorts. Well, then when I was diagnosed, I suddenly realised, but with knowing that, I realised what was going on. So I then put measures in place. So I started to be much better. And generally speaking, I am. And then this week I had some training and somebody didn't turn up. So I only had one person. We managed to juggle it, which meant that I should have been working today, but I didn't, which was great because I had today available to do stuff. And I'm going about my business. I then messaged you and said, bearing in mind my diary was actually in front of me, my paper one, and said, "Oh, Graham, nightmare. I've got this. We've got the podcast at 2, and I've got to go somewhere."
I said, "No, it's not. It's 4."
And I went, "Oh right." I said, "Oh right, okay. I must have because there'd been conversation about when it would be." So anyway, I'm like, "Oh, that's all good." So off I go. I do a bit of work, and then I'm like, "Oh right. Oh yeah, I've got my appointment at 2:00." Right. So I get ready. I go to the appointment. I message the lady, and I'm like, I don't know if my brain's just being typical Marianne here, and I've got the wrong day, time, or address. Then I looked in without looking in my diary. I looked in there and went, I've got the wrong day. It's not Thursday today. So by now I've messaged her. Then I deleted the message. I've got the wrong day. And then earlier on, somebody sent me an email. It was an email. And I went, oh my God, I'm supposed to be on a call at 3:30. So I went on and it said, no, it's tomorrow. And then I looked at the actual email, read it, and it said, this is a reminder for your thing tomorrow.
Now, I'm so glad that you're sharing all of this, because today's conversation with our guest today is all about authenticity. I don't think we could start this any better than with that fantastic personal life example of being really real and really honest and really open, as opposed to pseudo authenticity, which we do see online an awful lot these days, and we'll probably talk about that during today's show. So there you go, folks. That's Marianne giving her personal examples of being real, honest, and open. And here to discuss that with us today, we have Paul. Thanks for joining us, Paul. And Boyan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for
where are you coming from, folks? Tell us a little bit about you and where you're coming from.
Paul, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I'm in Scotland, so northeast Scotland, which is currently being snowed on.
Yes.
So we have a couple of inches up here. So yeah, somewhere kind of midway between Aberdeen and Inverness on the northeast coast.
Very nice indeed.
Yeah, very nice.
And I'm calling in from Woking, Surrey, so we can be further apart, me and Paul.
Oh my word! Well, now I know Woking very well indeed. I used to have to drive to Woking on a regular basis.
Okay.
The last paid role that I did, the office was based. Well, we had one office based in Woking, on the business park there. You'll know the business park. It's not the most salubrious of places in Woking, but it had a lovely little. It's got a lovely little cafe. I'll say that about it. It's got a lovely little cafe that serves all of the businesses that are on the business park, and then the other office was in Toronto, which was a little bit more, well, yeah, should we say nice? But there we go. Yeah, but Woking's a lovely place. Very, very accessible to get into London from Woking.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Also in Toronto.
Yeah, but well, yes, Toronto, London to Toronto. Although plane straight from London to Toronto, so no stopping. That's a good thing. So tell us a little bit more about what it is that you both do. Paul, perhaps you'd start.
Okay, so I'm in my full-time previous job. I'm a software developer, so I've been doing that for, well, most of my life. I wrote my first game when I was about 11 on the Commodore 64, if you remember those.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been kind of a nerd since then. I was kind of sitting there in the middle of summer with the curtains drawn, much to my parents' disgust, for days, weeks on end, coding this game, which was pretty awful, but I was quite pleased with it.
Cool. You don't look old enough to have been around with Commodore 64, but there you go.
Give you your payment for that later.
Daley Thompson's Decathlon was my favourite.
Yes.
Game.
Yeah, that was a bit energetic. I was into the car games and stuff, but yeah, they were a slightly different league to what I.
I was an Acorn Electron. I was an Acorn Electron person.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We shall discuss. We shall discuss later on. We will be discussing loading games by cassette tape and having to hold it on the right volume level for half an hour and then it failing. But
you see, as someone who was writing games, saving to cassette, only to find out when you next load it the next morning that you've lost everything. That was the real kicker. That was great fun. It still happens now. It just happens quicker because you don't have to wait for it to load. So yeah, I've been kind of doing that since then. I've been for the last 21 years or so. I've been freelance. I self-diagnosed earlier this year as ADHD, possibly autism as well, I think, but not sure. And it kind of, I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but what it's done is explained a lot, and it's explained a lot of the problems that I had with freelancing. The reason that I ended up doing freelancing, I hadn't even realized why I chose that. So it's opened up, it's given me a lot of explanations as to why, I've chosen the things I have, but also why I've had certain problems with them. And that's really how this came about, what we're working on now. But I'll let Boyan introduce himself and we'll get back to that.
So I've been in marketing for the last 15 years, specializing in digital marketing, customer acquisition, brand awareness, demand generation primarily. And unlike Paul, I've been primarily in on-site, in-office environments, so complete polar opposite. And although I'm not neurodivergent, I have worked with a lot of people who display those traits, and I understand the frustrations that they have with traditional work environments. So that's how Paul and me met and have built a relationship that we're going to go into a bit more detail in over this conversation.
Cool. So it must have started with an idea. Am I right?
Yeah, it actually started, I guess, really it started about 5 years ago. So things came to a head for me. I had what I have been calling a breakdown, but I now call a kind of, I don't know, it depends what mood I'm in, what I call it, but a reset. But I think now it was possibly just burnout. People talk about autistic burnout. I think what happened was decades of masking wears you out, exhausts you, and you get to a point where, something's got to give. So that was about 2019, January 2019. In fact, it was 7 p.m. on the 19th of January. So I remember it very well. And I, at the time, started, because I couldn't find the help I needed. It was really difficult. It was 3 o'clock in the morning by the time I got out of A&E for that fifth time in a week. And I was trying to find support and resources that they couldn't offer me at the hospital. And I just couldn't find what I needed. It's very difficult. So I kind of set my mind to building something there, and I did. I built a site called Group Therapy, which I kind of launched, and in true ADHD style, I then immediately started thinking, well, this is not quite right. You know, it's never quite right, ADHD. There's always something you can add to it, something you can do with it. It went through about 5 iterations, never really got launched properly because I never finished it. I just kept improving it and fussing over it. And I think looking back now, something was always missing. It was like I didn't have the whole picture. And what's happened this year is finally realizing why I've been having all these problems, including the anxiety that led to the breakdown. Now I kind of knew what I needed to build. And so this came about. And you know when you've got the right idea, because all of a sudden everything just clicks, and you go from being very interested in it to really being passionate about it. And that's what's kind of propelled me forward with this. So I spent the last, I guess that was about July, I started planning it, started building it a few weeks later, and it's just about ready. So almost ready to go.
I find one aspect of what you said in there really, really interesting. I'll tell you why. So I work with people with neurodiversity all day long. I have done for many, many, many years in different guises. I believe I'm neurodiverse myself, but I wouldn't seek a diagnosis of it because that's my own personal viewpoint on needing a label, etc. However, let's go to the point of ideas. I actually think that all ideas are good. I think all of the ideas that you had along the way to get to that particular manifestation of it were great ideas. Yeah. I think the thing that I see day in, day out that people with neurodiverse brains struggle with is finding the right mechanism to release the idea. Yeah. That's the bit.
Executing it.
Yeah, it's actually the mechanism that you need to get a particular idea into the world in a coherent way. So actually all of your ideas were probably good, but I think what you probably found was the right mechanism at that point.
Yeah, it was the right iteration of that base idea. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
And you build. Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they have an idea for something, they've got the patience to sit on it for a while and work on it.
Yeah.
But when I think the thing is as well, when it's something that when it's something you are so passionate about, as you said. So when I look at my business, quite often I look at other bigger businesses, but their whole idea behind what they do is very different than mine. Mine is about doing it differently for people, whereas a lot of other training businesses, I'm not meaning to be rude, but for a lot of them it is, let's say if we can launch another course, it's less passion behind the whole thing. And therefore, many of those people probably do have a business plan and all the things I probably didn't have. But they sit on it and then they launch it. Whereas probably like the likes of us go, I've got to get it out there because it's needed.
Yeah. Well, it can be driven by financial need as well. And I think that's the problem I've made in the past is that I try not to get to a point where I depend on the business to be my income because it's not ready yet. And you have to accept it's going to be potentially a year before that happens once you've launched it. And I think if you don't do that, you can put too much pressure on it and it can kill it, before it's really had a chance to. It depends what you're building, but I think that's the case with this kind of thing.
That's interesting. You say that about the freelance bit, though, because Graham knows my journey was employed, doesn't work, freelance, doesn't really pay, into COVID, and okay, I'm going to have to do it by myself. But I often didn't charge my worth, or as I say, I was speaking to you about this, Graham, I hadn't charged my worth, or was feeling like I couldn't justify in my own business charging. And actually, I think it was you, Graham, said to me, but you've paid your dues. You paid your dues while you were freelancing for other people. And so, yeah, I was kind of half doing both in the way that you said. I was doing both. So doing the freelancing and knowing I had some money coming in, but also sort of dipping my toe in doing my own bit.
Yeah, see, I'm doing that. I'm still working for clients doing the web development, software development, and sort of doing this at the same time. But what I've found with that is that because you get those bursts of energy, I wouldn't call it energy, it doesn't feel that energetic, but those bursts of time when you can actually focus on it and get your brain into the right gear to work on it. And those times can go on for me for several weeks, or at least long enough to cause a problem with the client work that I'm supposed to be doing. I kind of, I would much rather work on this, 24/7. It's my passion. Having to do the client work, I can say this because none of them will be watching probably, but it's incredibly boring. Once you've got something like this in your head, you just want to get on with it. Anything else is a real irritation, or it can be.
Yeah, it is not really your passion, so you don't really want to put your energy into it. I want to bring Boyan in on this because actually from a marketing point of view, and I'd love to know how you kind of then got involved as well, because it can be an absolute nightmare, can't it? Because you've got someone that's absolutely passionate. They've got real reasons behind what they want to do. I tend to find as well when I talk to people, especially with ADHD, who've got a product or got a service and they want to put it out there and they're incredibly passionate about doing stuff, that then when you start to ask them for sort of to put that together in terms of marketing materials to put out into the world, that they then focus on the wrong things. Now, I don't know whether you've found that at all or whatever, but I had this conversation earlier. I looked at a pitch deck from somebody, and it was all about the things that we give people, right? In terms of, that we give, we're going to give you a bit of this and we're going to give you, and I said, there's nothing in there that talks about purpose. There's nothing in there that actually connects to the person that you wanting to buy this or come into this, to say this is the passion behind it. This is the reason I've done this. This is the change that this is going to create. This is the world changing reason for this. The emotive stuff, which is actually what gets people to buy. What you've done there is second level stuff, which is actually go, and the reason, and we're doing all of this stuff which leads to that or enables that to happen. But that shouldn't come first, because nobody's interested in that first. What initially gets people is that passion bit. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
I do, absolutely. And there certainly is passion, because it's one thing having an idea which Paul brought to life, but timing plays a big part in it as well. And we feel that now is the time. There's a lot of discussion online around a suitable platform for neurodivergent creative professionals, and it's clearly missing. So the demand is out there. It's a hot topic. Everyone is, there's businesses out there that are trying to get people back into the office, and it's not right for everyone. So we believe that that is key. And part of this, it's not just our passion. We're trying to get as many people involved into this project as possible to make sure that it's a neurodivergent platform built for and by, with insights and feedback from as many different people as possible. And that's the key thing about this. It's not just about us bringing this to life. It's a shared project that we want as many ideas and voices to contribute to as possible.
Collaboration's a massive thing in modern business, isn't it? Full stop anyway. Do you think some people still, I'm going to ask this because I think this is something that the neurodiverse mind does get, which neurotypical minds quite often don't get, which is that the concept that there is in a way no competition. And actually it's about bringing people to all stakeholders together, including people that are potentially would have been seen as competition, to get their voices in
Yeah.
and amplifying the really important points that you're really good at together. And I think I'm going to say, outside of my neurodiverse clients, with neurotypical clients, I get more struggle, more friction with them on that side of things. They really don't understand the idea that we might all benefit if we collaborate together, even with people that we're in competition with.
I agree with that. And actually, the neurodiverse sort of communities that I've spoken to and engaged with, I've seen a lot of skepticism because, and I understand, because for a very long time, people with neurodiversity have been left behind and forgotten about, especially with work and freelancing platforms and from a digital point of view. And we're trying to change that. So they're skeptical because they don't understand that this is actually built for them, and it will help them improve how they access meaningful work and projects so that they can get behind and push forward. So getting them involved at the start has been difficult, but we're trying to be open and active and honest about our approach. And if we're as authentic as possible with what we're trying to achieve, then hopefully that will resonate with them and they'll get on board.
I think my my default state is not to trust anyone and assume that they want something. So
really,
I've always, and the other difference between this and previous attempts or previous things that I've done in the past, I've always tried to do everything myself. And I now have one of many things I've realized, and there are lots of things I realize, there's more stuff every day. One of the things I've realized is why I've done that, and the fact that now I kind of have given myself permission to actually admit that I can't do everything myself. Because what happens is it just doesn't happen. There's stuff that
your language, want of a better word there, is interesting when you said admit, because Graham knows. So Graham supports me with access to work. Well, I mean, I got the access to work and then was like, okay, so I've got these hours, what do I do with them? That was like great. Then I was like, which bit of the business do I fix or sort or something first? So I sat on it, and actually in the end it was because quite accidentally I met Graham, and then I was saying that I can't afford for anybody to do my social media. I'd love for you to, but I don't actually have any work coming in. I was freelancing. I said, understandably, you cost more than I'm earning. I can't do it. So he said, okay, well, I'll help you with it. And then when you are bringing enough work in, you can pay me, which was really great. And then, of course, then we got talking. And then he said, well, actually, why don't I help you with stuff? Because I was like, I just don't know which bit to fix first. But actually, Graham knows it took a long time for me to accept the help because, and I talked about this to someone the other day, about how for me, all the way through my life, I've been like this. I don't like accepting help off anybody because in my mind, that's me not being good enough. That's me. I feel like, and not in a paranoid way, that I'm being talked about. She's not good enough. And then when people don't accept help off me, I then think, oh God, I can't even offer any help. So
they're not asking you because you're not good. It all comes down to I'm not good enough. It's those voices that are always there. That
whole, it's interesting because I listened to Rob Dahl's Mindset Mentor, and he's brilliant. He's neurodiverse as well, and so much of it makes sense that he talks about. And that he was saying on there about the perfectionism, which is really interesting to listen to, which is part of what you said at the beginning about why we never get anything done. Because of, and like Graham knows, I've just written a program, and that was 6 years in the making, of which probably 5 of them were thinking about it, thinking there's no point because I don't do that sort of thing. Not people like me don't do that. And then probably about a month of it was actioning the whole lot. But as he was saying, that perfectionism is actually the thing that kills you, really, because all you're doing is.
A therapist told me once that perfectionism is a form of self-abuse. So, I mean, it is in a way, because what you're doing is dooming yourself to never do.
It's constant procrastination because you're never, and I know that when I did this program that I was like so enthusiastic about when I had Graham, I was like, right, literally, I did it, and I went and just thought, anyway, on to the next thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm gonna move this slightly onto. I think you mentioned earlier that about working for yourself, and there's a thing in there about people with neurodiversity ending up working for themselves as opposed to potentially working for someone else. And it's interesting because I've worked for myself for the majority of my life, since the age of 11, which is when I started my first company. But I actually chose later on in life to go and take a job and leave behind my self-employed business for a while, primarily because I wanted to test myself to see whether I was actually employable. I'd got into my 40s and I thought, actually, am I employable or am I not? You know, I wasn't sure. And I have to say, and this is the God's honest, I've always avoided a situation where I go for an interview. Always avoided it. I can honestly say I've had 2 interviews in my life for a job. One of them I did get. The other one, which was when I was much younger, I didn't get. And I was kind of gutted, but angry at the same time. I don't think I've ever spoken about this before. And the reason, but I know why I didn't get it, and I had feedback because someone I knew was sitting on the panel, and they let me know. They gave me the feedback, and the reason I didn't get it was because in the interview, I just kept saying, "Yeah, but that wouldn't happen," right? Because they kept giving me scenarios, and they go, "So, tell us what would happen, or what would you do if, you know, this disaster happened, and that you were managing this situation, and then this disaster happened?" And I go, "But if I was managing it, that wouldn't happen."
That's actually quite a good answer, though, isn't it? Because it means you're
Well,
confident in your ability to do whatever you need to be doing to avoid that.
But exactly. But what it taught me at a very young age is actually that people aren't looking for they aren't looking for that answer.
Yeah.
They're
so
not looking
you,
for
that
the
you need
honest
to
answer.
mask, you need to pretend.
Yeah. That what it taught me was actually what they were looking for is that you would go and seek the right route and get the right knowledge in order to know how to do that. Right.
How can you refuse? Which, as you just said, Paul, it's that pretending thing, like role playing, that whole, which is kind of what it is, isn't it? The kind of asking you to do that.
This makes me think of, I've just read Untypical by Pete Warmby. One of the best books I've read, actually. It's just, in terms of relating to something, it's just every single page is just incredible. And it's written primarily about autism, but about ADHD as well. And it just, what he says in there is just how tiring it is, how exhausting it is trying to figure out what someone is asking you to give them. Not because they don't want the answer to the question they've asked you. That would be far too simple. But what society has this hidden set of rules that everyone else seems to have their rule book to. All the neurotypicals were born with this manual pre-installed, and we didn't get a copy. And so we're left kind of just thinking, small talk is a good example. You know, we don't really get what small talk is for. It's obviously it's functional in some way. It's like lubricates the social interaction or something.
It's interesting because it's almost like you want to say to people, I think I probably have said it before as well, actually. Do you actually want the real answer, or do you I probably have said that. And interestingly, my son's only 12, and I suspect he's got ADHD. Really, month into secondary school, and I dread getting emails, but but this is really interesting though, what happened yesterday. Graham, you'll appreciate this, I know. So it snowed yesterday, and anyway, he came to me and he said, he came in last night and he said, do you know, he said, we were outside and he said we were told that we weren't allowed to make snowballs. He said, I think that's a bit ridiculous, really, don't you? Well, I was a teacher and I kind of get the fundamentals behind it all and stuff. So I said, well, I get where you're coming from. I said, but if everybody was throwing snowballs, it might get a bit out of hand. I didn't really feel that, but I've got to say that. So he went, well, like that. He said, so anyway, we were outside and there was a few of us and we were bound by the bike shed. And he said, I was leaning up against it and there's like a roof thing on it. And he said, I literally was leaning up against it. And he said, the head teacher came over and said, boys, what are you doing here or something? And he said, he hauled us all into his office. I said, oh God, Oliver, I said, what happened? I thought, I know where this is going. Oh. And he said, well, we had to go in there. And then he said to me, what were you doing in there? You were going to throw snowballs, weren't you? And Oliver said, he said, with all due respect, no, I wasn't. And he said, well, I don't know that, blah, 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 blah. And he said, you actually haven't got any proof that I was going to throw a snowball. He said, I was just standing there and my hand was on there. And I'm like, if ever there was a sign that he...
Yeah, it's the black and white, isn't it?
He's right, he's right, though. There's the fairness thing in there, isn't there? He said, he was accusing him of something.
Yeah, it's
but
assumption.
We've talked about the autism and the ADHD bit, that the ADHD bit was don't accuse me of something you've got no proof of. And the autism bit, which is are you really asking me for this social answer or do you want to actually know what I think? Because
it's that kind of seeing everything in black and white, not the grey bit in between where everyone else, all the neurotypicals seem to live. It's just, it's exhausting. It's tiring. And the funny thing is that, probably not funny, but in my case, I won't tell you how old I am, but it's been decades that I've not known about this. And yet I've spent, apart from all the stuff that I've realised and I can now attribute to it, and that's great, it's actually quite liberating. And it's also can be quite entertaining sometimes when you just suddenly remember something and you just kind of laugh to yourself. But I've also put in place all these kind of coping mechanisms that I didn't realise why I was doing that. But I've got so good at masking and so good at doing this stuff that I'm not your kind of typical non-neurotypical, if that makes sense. I'm not, I mean, there isn't a typical ADHD person or autistic, but I don't fit that kind of what people think of ADHD. They think that you never finish anything. Well, okay, I don't finish most things, but I have ironically finished almost every book about ADHD that I bought, which is
there you go.
You probably have people have said it to me before, you don't look like somebody that have got it, and we just talked about this earlier, that there is this, I feel, and to anybody watching this, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I feel a bit embarrassed now saying that I have it, not because I needed a label, because actually at the time, part of the reason it came out of nowhere really, having worked with kids that had ADHD, boys primarily, but I got it because I knew that my son needed help, my eldest, and I kind of thought, well, maybe that would sort of prompt things. So for me, it was like you said, you identify. So yes, I've got that label, but I do it more to advocate now and to laugh about the things I do, because like that happened earlier on, I then had to go and check whether I actually have got a gym class tonight or tomorrow. But I laugh about that stuff now, and I think actually what it's doing is, and I did a post about it today, is that I think a lot more people probably there's some people that are diagnosed, there's many people that do identify as, and the more we're open about our behaviours and being authentic, the more that I think we can, and Graham and I talked about this morning, is that we maybe will get to a point where we don't have to say, I have got this, so you can accept me. I went away the other weekend and I was trying to explain to somebody why, how tiring it is. Like for me, timekeeping is a difficult one. I try as I might, I will push every second. And I was trying to say to them that because I was meeting these people I didn't know, I was 45 minutes early, and I met my other friend and went, oh my God, I'm never early. He said, no, nor am I. And when I tried to explain it to these people, I said I was 45 minutes early. And they said, well, of course, Marianne, you should be, planes don't wait for you. And I thought, really? Did you just say that to me? I'm 48 years of age and and I said, but what I'm trying to get across to you is that, yes, I did what I needed to, but I was so scared of being late. And then not my friend, he'd have been fine about it. I said, but I was so scared. What you don't actually see for me to be on time was I didn't sleep all night. I woke up every hour because I was so worried my alarm wouldn't go off, even though I didn't need it.
I actually make it more likely that you are going to have a problem the next day by worrying about it so much the day before.
Exactly. And I don't think people realise just how much energy it takes. And she kind of just was a bit like, oh, well. And I said, oh, well, I said, you know,
that's the key word. That is the key word. When it comes to all of these things, that's the key word, is energy, right? That's absolutely the key word. Because the thing is that behaviors come from lots of different places, right? And none of us should make any assumptions. You know, I hate everybody making assumptions about each other. That's one of my big pet hates. But nobody should make any assumptions about anybody else. And we should, you know, one of the main things is we shouldn't make assumptions about how we communicate with each other as well. But as I say, behaviors come from any kind of place. So there's lots of people that will arrive early for any kind of plane, train, automobile, or you know, whatever journey, right? But where that comes from, right, is going to be different. There are other people whose life, the way that their brain works and their lifestyle and everything else is that they manage to be so laissez-faire about everything that they can just. My eldest is one of those. He'll always be late. And they'll always just rock up, and they're always just like going, oh, you know, and he always gets away with it, and it's always fine.
But there is a societal norm that being early is better than late, and what these people also didn't. This is what got on my nerves, was that I think that neurodiverse people whose minds work that way or whatever, are generally a lot more accepting. And this is part of what my LinkedIn post was today. They're generally more accepting. So when I had suggested to these same people, I can get passes for the airport lounge, get them for £18. I said, would they like them? No, it's a waste of money. So actually, in the end, they ended up being late, picking me and my friend up. So we couldn't go in the lounge because we were going to. What they didn't actually realise is that I orchestrate everything so that if I paid for the lounge, I know I have to be there at that time, and I've paid it. It also means that I can then sort my bag out on my head and everything. But there was no consideration given that actually for me, I needed that lounge.
Yeah,
I needed that. It was to do with other people, and like you'll know that you probably have lots of different mechanisms and things you do to try and show up in the world in the way that
everything involves around 5 times the number of steps it should do, because like that's exactly what you just said, is that you end up putting things in place to almost try and guarantee the outcomes that you need to achieve, because you know you can't rely just on yourself to get there. So although you are relying on yourself, you're doing this yourself. It's your own sort of mechanism. So
and someone moves some part of that.
Oh God, yeah.
They don't think it's any big deal.
Yeah. But going back to what I was saying about that is, so a lot of people will wake up early to get there early, and they will set the alarm clock to get there, to get up early, to get, you know, whatever. The bit that will be the big difference is they won't wake up every 5 minutes during the night wondering whether the alarm clock that they set, they did actually set it. Keep looking over at the alarm clock to see whether or not actually it's reached the right time. And then when they've gone out the door, think, have I got my keys? Oh no, actually, have I got that? Did I, even though you packed it all the night before and checked it 5 times?
I left my memory stick somewhere the other day.
Yep.
And the knock-on effect of that.
Yep.
And then I sat there and then went, you absolute fool, Marianne. And then probably the same thought with you. I just then started having a go at myself, and then and actually other people do this sort of stuff, but it's almost like, and then I think if I tell people that happens, they'll go, oh, Marianne, oh, like that. And I think, I don't do that to you. I don't do that to other people. Actually, when other people forget things, probably the same to you, I then try and make them feel better by going, oh yeah, I do silly things like that too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the platform a bit more. Bjorn, talk me through exactly what this great idea does.
Well, quite simply, it's a freelancing and self-employment platform for neurodivergent creatives. So if you think of Upwork, it's pretty similar, but it's built with neurodivergent professionals in mind. So we give neurodivergents the opportunity to connect with companies who are actively looking for creative freelancers or self-employment opportunities on the platform, and leverage their skill sets and strengths to make sure that we can connect them to meaningful projects that align with their skill set.
Okay.
It's job listings as well, regular job listings. So if you look at it as, if you were to take the best bits of Upwork, as you say, Upwork, Fiverr, and a job board like CV Library or Indeed, then it's those kind of three things merged together. And as far as we're aware, there's no one else that's done that all in one place. And the reason for doing that is that I, as I say, for the last 20 years have been freelancing, but I've also done contracts during that time, and I've done a few on-site placements, which are interesting. And I've done a kind of hodgepodge, and I think particularly as a contractor, I've been contracting since '96. So, and you tend to kind of swap around. What you very rarely do as a contractor is morph into a perm role. That just doesn't happen. I think once you've been a contractor for a while, you probably won't do that because the money just doesn't stack up.
So it takes the best bits of the existing platforms that are out there.
Does it simplify it?
Sorry?
Does it simplify it as well?
That's the thinking behind it, because everything is one place. So there's one search. So you put in your soft skills, your preferences, things like that. So good at problem solving, all the usual traits that we have and things that we're good at when it comes to a job or a task. It will then match you against the jobs and the projects and the contracts that are on offer, and it will show them to you all in one place with a percentage match. So, what we're doing is two different types of matching, because the other thing that I found with job boards is they don't match both ways. So and what I mean by that is that you may have put in the things that you're good at, which might make the job a good match for you. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a good fit for their job, because you might not have the skills they're looking for. So it actually gives you a best match and a best fit. So it's match and fit. And overall, what it will give you is basically the best matches first.
Cool.
And the idea is that people that possibly were only looking for a perm role will also see other opportunities presented as well. And it will just opens up possibilities that perhaps they hadn't considered before.
Now, does the platform then allow you to celebrate your, and I'm going to go both ways with this, does the platform allow you to celebrate your neurodiversity or your neurotypicalness, if that's a word?
In what sense?
Well, that's okay, because I think the missing link out there, my personal view in the missing link of the world of work, is that what we typically tend to do with people is we pigeonhole them based upon titles. And I'm not talking about labels for disability or labels for personality traits or anything like that. But what we do is people have got titles, and based on their title, we assume that they are good at everything that should be under the umbrella of that title.
Yeah.
And I think where that goes wrong is, and especially for probably neurodiverse brains, is that you get brought into a company because you are brilliant at leaping from there to there in terms of kind of cognition, right? And you don't need those, whilst everybody else is trying to go, so we have to go from that step to that step, from that step to that step, and you go, yeah, but hang on, you can just go from there to there.
Yeah.
And they go, wow, right? But and it really works. It really works for that. But then what they try and do is go, oh, right, so you're okay, brilliant, come into the company, and then they go, right, so today we're going to do this, and then they put you into a group on a project where you actually have to go from step to step to step, and you sit there going,
Yeah.
Like, I want to paint my nails. Because and that's not how your brain works, right? So for me, I think where we can really get to grips with this whole job shirts, placing people, getting the most out of people, is when we can start to understand that and go, right,
Yeah.
I need a list of what it is that you not just good at, but you absolutely love. And I also need a list of things that you really don't like doing.
This is what we're offering, is both the opportunity to put both sides of that forward. And I think the other side of it is there's a lot of education needed here.
Yeah.
That's really the difficult part, is educating clients and prospective employers, because how do I put this diplomatically? I usually don't bother. To be fair, I won't. I mean, I think the problem is that they have so many options when they're employing people. The difficulty is going to be to get them to employ a neurodivergent person instead of a neurotypical who can do the same job, supposedly on paper.
Yeah.
Because they see it, there is this perception that it's going to be more difficult. It's going to be more hassle for them, more time. I mean, someone on LinkedIn the other day said that she was told, if I had an office full of people like you, I'd never get anything done. I mean, it's, apart from being a pretty awful thing to say, they're probably
when actually, from a neurodiverse person's point of view, I mean, I've said it in terms of me as a person. Again, Graham knows me. I'm not actually that difficult. If you just listen to me for a bit, and I kind of state what I, this works, that doesn't work. If you do that, and actually, then I'm absolutely fine. And a lot of the time, it'll be if you just put those things in place, those little scaffolding or whatever it is, and so actually, these businesses should look at themselves and see that actually, if they put that legwork in at the beginning. Actually, you can pretty much let somebody, and Graham, don't you, that if I say to you, right, okay, tell me what you need me to do, you'll say, and then I'll run off and do that. It'll either take me 10 weeks or 5 minutes. And actually, if he puts the pressure on me, or he just says, like there's something we've organised in the last couple of days, and actually everything will run really smoothly. But what gets on my nerves is that my friend in Jamaica, amazing businesswoman, said she said, when people criticise me for the things I don't do or they don't like, she said, I tell them I'm not pick and mix. You either take me or you don't. And what gets to me is that sometimes it seems a bit fashionable, like, oh, if somebody's got ADHD, they'll be this, or if they're autistic, they're that. But then they criticise the other parts of us, and I think, but I never said. I absolutely never. Please don't highlight the things that I've had highlighted all my life.
Again, isn't it? This is going back to assumption and preconception and that kind of thing. But there's also
picking holes in the stuff that you've probably heard all your life.
Yeah.
And you just think, but I don't go around doing that to you. I don't go around pulling you apart.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that we're much more sensitive to that as well, potentially, than they are. So it hurts like 10 times as much. But
well, is it? Or as my post today said, quite often people will say, or they used to say to me, they don't dare say it to me now, you're too sensitive. And you're too sensitive, you talk too much, there's a few other things. And I said, but actually, maybe I thought you were a bit insensitive, but I was too polite to say. Or maybe, unless somebody gives me a word count, which I'm not aware you did, maybe I didn't think you said enough, actually. But I just, and so when you flip it round, usually when people make those comments, it's because they've got some sort of agenda, which basically is, can you just shut up because you're getting on my nerves now? That's generally actually when you look at it. And so someone the other day said that they had a manager that would literally pull them apart. And she said, but actually, I wanted to actually say back to this person and tried, actually, you do a lot of these things wrong, but this person wasn't having any of it. So I think a lot of it is, yes, are we sensitive, or is it just we don't want to take people's...
I think we are sensitive, but I think one of the things that we need to be telling the employers or educating them in is that if they're taking someone on for certain skills because they think, well, I have a task that needs someone who's hyper-focused, I need a neurodivergent for that because I've read that they're brilliant for that. We're not, for a start, we're not just things that you wheel in to perform a trick. And at the same time, if you're going to hire us for the fact that we're really good at that, you've got to also bear in mind we might need a day the next day of doing some really low grade stuff while we recover, because we're not going to be hyper focused all day every day 5 days a week. If we do,
and it's actually the granulation of that as well, because you will only be hyper focused if it's something that you want to be hyper focused on.
Absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't mean we'll be able to do that for every task you set us of a certain type. It's not that.
I like that, what you said about, well, I don't like it, but I do, about wheeling people out. Because, you know, it struck me the other day, and no, it did strike me the other day when I worked somewhere and someone, it was years ago, and holes were picked in something I'd done. And I remember at the time thinking, is anybody else looking at anyone else's work about what they're doing here? Because I'm pretty sure other people make mistakes. So it's all very well that you're going to highlight the fact, Marianne, you're late, you're this, you're that, you're the other. But in a workspace, well, what about the fact that, or some other people will say to me, I'm not very good at the stuff you're great at. Well, as you say, then should we sort of maybe...
Yeah, let's pick on everyone, or don't pick on anyone. You know, make it decide either way.
Question for both of you. I'd love to know an answer for this, because we're getting close to time, and I think this would be a great way to close it as well. Do you think that we're getting towards, and maybe you're, you know, in the future your platform might move towards this as well? Do you think we're, especially with AI in this, or at least machine learning playing a role in this, do you think we're getting towards a point where actually it will work the other way, in which what people will do is you'll agree contracts with people in terms of their time and how much their time costs, and then basically you'll say, okay, you've got a skill set, I like you as a person, so you can sit over there as a freelancer and be open to work that I put out, and then you literally put the work out there, and people go, yeah, I want that bit, and I want that bit, based on, you know, them feeling comfortable, and not just comfortable, but actually passionate about, oh, you know, that's really my kind of thing.
It's interesting you say that, because that's something that's occurred to me as an idea, because this is exactly what we're good at. I say we as a neurodivergent. It's exactly what we can excel at, is picking the bits we'd like to do. And when I say this, and the other thing to bear in mind is that the things that we talk about benefiting neurodivergents actually benefit almost everybody, almost universally. I'm a big fan of the theory of universal design, which is where everything is designed with everyone in mind. And it's a slightly utopian view, but I mean, perhaps it isn't. It shouldn't be, because if you're going to build something, you only have to build it once, and it usually costs about the same. It's only made more complicated by people arguing over whether they should be doing it. So I do think that there's a place for something like that, where you put a project out there, it's broken down into tasks, and you have a team of people, neurotypical, neurodivergent, doesn't matter, it's all inclusive. And they just pick the bits they want to do. And I think that it would work particularly well when you've got people that you've worked with and you kind of have that trust, and you have to get to that point. But I think that it could be a destination, it could be an aim to get to that point where that's how projects are handled. It
could almost be like a game, couldn't it? It could almost be gamified, where, like, actually, as you do work for somebody, you kind of open up a level.
Do you think employers would go for that approach? I think this is the difficulty with all of this, that there are loads of things we could do with this, and I think you're on the right lines. Definitely, I've thought about this myself, but the issue I keep coming back to is the employer, educating the employer, giving them that incentive to go this route, and really convincing them of why it's going to work. And it's very difficult to do that when you're not quite sure yourself yet, but you think it probably will. That's not enough to sell them on it. So it's this is why change takes so long, because you have to test the water. You have to, unless you're a big corporation with a multi-billion-pound budget and you can just throw money at it and you know, do
Well,
a big test.
This is where the whole idea of with the access to work, we flipped it round based on it was somebody that I've got to know that said, actually, you know, I've learned a lot from you. He said, I never would have thought, I've got people that work for me that potentially are, and I just never would have. He said, because it wasn't on my radar, but because you speak so openly about it. And actually from that came the idea of access to work usually works on that. Let's coach you. Well, I don't really want to be coached out of being me. Thank you. Let's coach you into trying to understand me. And that it is that whole communication bit, which is the education bit. And I don't mean, oh, let's go in and do training, because I think that awareness training is just that spark of interest. And then from there, I did some the other week. That's where you get people going, now I know this. Oh my goodness, I want to try and make life easier. Yeah. And if it means me doing this is going to make it easier for you. And I genuinely think most people would, if they were educated at that early bit, would be more on board to go, okay, tell me what can I do?
Well, this is partly where we think this could work very well, is that because we're incorporating the freelance side of it, projects and perm and contract jobs, it's very easy for a company to take on a freelancer for one project and just try it. You know, try neurodivergent for a day. I mean, we could make a thing about it. You know, they get an opportunity without going through the expense and the commitment of a permanent employee, because it's a big deal taking someone on as a perm employee, and a big cost. But trying someone on a project on a freelance basis, see how it goes. Work with a few neurodivergents, put them in various places, and see if it is what it's cracked up to be. I mean, I am making us sound a bit like circus tricks again, I realise that, but if you're not sure, try it on a freelance project, and then if it still works, then we have people that will do perm work and contract as well.
I think Boyan wants to say something on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of the platform is to remove any misunderstandings, both from the candidate side and to your point, Graham, about working on specific projects. I mean, the platform is built to that standard to a certain case. You know, the candidate can join, they can enter their preferences, how they want to work, what their skill set is, what projects they're most interested in, and they will only apply for those jobs that match those preferences. And then from an employer's point of view, again, removing any misunderstandings by understanding who they are employing and what benefits that's going to bring to their organization or to their project. And we want to provide as much of that as possible with educational content for both sides of the platform, so that everyone benefits.
Probably worth mentioning that we've just taken on a occupational psychologist as our third team member. So she's in charge of making sure that we're getting the language right, that we've got all the materials that are accurate, and also she'll be producing all materials for companies and employers and things like that as well. So
I think that's brilliant. We could talk more, but we're out of time. Thank you so much.
That's gone very quickly.
Yeah, hasn't it? That's how it works on this. Thank you both so much for that. I'm sure this is going to start a lot of debate out there, especially as the clips go out as well over the week that this goes out. So, folks, if you want to know more, please do connect with. You're both on LinkedIn, aren't you? So we will make sure that people can connect with you both on LinkedIn.
And the waiting list is now open as well if they wanted to visit the website and join.
Okay. Well, make sure I have the links so that people can do that as well, and we'll make sure that happens. Mm-hmm. Another great conversation on A Better Way of Life. Thank you to all of you for joining in today. Hope you've enjoyed that conversation. If you have, then do let other people on the platform know about this so that they can go and experience the conversation as well.
And if you turned up to an appointment today early or missed things.
Yeah, if you've missed your podcast today, sorry about that. Okay, we will be back same time, same place next week. It's always the same time. Until then, bye for now.